My name is Osei-Frimpong. Now, I was going to do this show on the way in which my kids' school keeps giving them more and more both schoolwork and homework that involves them on an app. And I do not like that. I wish they were not on an app. I wish they were instead, given pens and papers and doing work that way. But instead, they're on an app, and I do not like that. But that was, can you see me? Or can you hear me? Can't you see? Oh, good. You can't see me. All right, good. So I was going to do this show on the way in which my kids' school, especially the middle school, not so much the younger school, the elementary school, but the elementary school pretty much leaves me alone. The middle school just keeps giving my kids more and more and more and more work to be done on a computer screen, and I don't think that's appropriate. And I think it's unfortunate. I think it's bad for America. It's bad for the kids that when they come home, they have to log on to something and then wait for something to boot up and then click on things. No, it should just be, if there's homework, and I'm kind of anti-homework. If there's homework, it should be on pen and paper and maybe a worksheet or study out of books. Right? That's all. Yeah, that's the way that should work. But instead, they have to log in, and I just think it's a waste of instructional time. It's definitely a waste of home time. I can't help but think it's a waste of instructional time when they're at school and doing this stuff too. And people say, oh no, it's good for them to learn how to use technology in classrooms. Now, these are consumer devices. They'll figure out that stuff in the same way I figured out how to use technology so that you can see the show. What I need them to learn in school is how to do boring work. Boring yet meaningful work, and that's with pens and papers, and that's just how I think about So I was going to do a show about that, but instead I'm going to talk about Mamdani's tribute to Big Woman. So he gave Big Woman, that is the gender lobby on the left, the liberal left. Last few shows have been great. Oh, thank you. He gave the gender lobby his transition team. Now, a lot of his campaign team were men, but you remember his campaign team started with him when he was nothing, and maybe a lot of women didn't want to be with him when he was nothing. But now that he's something, he's got these women, which is good because Lena Khan is awesome, and it's great that she's trying a job, and New York's a great place to be, and it's great, and you can find qualified women to do all of these things. But my issue is whether that's going to be enough to pacify Big Woman. Is that going to be enough to pacify the feminists? Because here's the deal: women are a voting majority. Most people who vote are women. They vote 55%. I think it's 55 to 45, 54. And I think it's been that way for decades. They show up and vote. They can do that. They live longer. They show up to vote. And those women who consider themselves feminist and take their gender identity as the sole part of their politics, which is entirely too many of them, honestly, will look for some reason to discount him for not being a woman. And so he tried to give himself a little prophylactic, a little phalanx, if you will, as some would call it, a harem, in the form of his transition team. I don't know if it was wise. I don't know if it's sufficient, but someone's got to take out Big Woman. Someone's as a block, as an entitled block in the liberal and left spaces, because for a few reasons. The first reason you have to take out Big Woman as a particular block is that they have a partial identity, but they assume that it's a universal identity. So they assume that what's good for especially professional class women is good for everyone, which isn't even true. And honestly, even working class women, what's good for working class women isn't necessarily good for everybody. Everybody. The trope that men make money and spend it on the family, and women make money and save it for themselves. That's a cultural truth that's gone deep. That's gone deep. So it's not exactly clear that lifting up women will lift up everybody, despite what the propaganda will tell you. Because sometimes women forget about men. And one of the reasons you think this is true is because women are so good at forgetting about men, they don't actually consider all of the men below them men. So when they think about, the patriarchy, they can only think about men above them. Or maybe at their level. They just forgot about all the guys who are like cleaning up stuff and like out there in the middle of the cold doing road construction work. Those guys don't even rate as guys. They're ungendered beast of burden because they can never have a chance to smash. So that's an issue of what we consider women and men. All right, so this is one of my chat says, I know this is off topic, but the funky academic got into watching that Nick Fuentes. That dude is something else. Got into watching Nick. Yeah, if I got you into watching Nick Fuentes, that's fine. I just got you early. Like, look, the kid's so good, you're gonna end up seeing him sometime. I'm just trying to get you used to and inoculated, and why he's relevant. The real masks off moment for the America about Nick Fuentes is if he ever gets in a real debate with someone like Heather Cox Richardson, some resistance liberal, and then everyone will know, oh, resistance liberalism is on the wayside. I'm going to do another show on the horseshoe and how there's an assumption that I'm a leftist. I'm a valid leftist. I believe government should step in and support good families, good jobs, and property ownership and all of these things. But I'm just not sure you get to a left America through the liberal center. I think it might be possible to get to a left America by hopping the horseshoe. Because if for no other reason, the Nick Fuentes of the world will take on big woman in the way that the liberal left won't. And so as a person, as a black man who's a leftist, the idea is that I should be in coalition with big woman. I should be in coalition with the liberal feminists. And we are not in the coalition. We don't believe in the same things. We don't believe in family the same way. They're okay with no-fault divorce. I think it's normalized child abuse. We don't believe they think people deserve rights by a matter of feelings because it feels good and it's nice and it's kind. But I think rights need to be delineated, like seriously. And it's not about kindness. I think maybe fathers need to know before the person they impregnated gets an abortion. I'm not saying they get final say or veto power, but I think there should be like a conversation, either culturally supported or mandated conversation. I think I could be talked into that. So me and the liberal center doesn't really agree. Plus, they don't believe in borders, and I believe in borders. So the idea that I have to go through the liberal center to get to a left America, a real left America, and they're indifferent about labor. Indifferent about labor. They can talk like they care about labor, but they don't care about labor. Liberals don't care about labor. It's a big market society. You can't care about labor, and you can't really be serious about a welfare state and not care about borders. Like, they're not even serious about the rule of law, because if you were serious about the rule of law, you would see the importance of borders, because that way you negotiate asylum and extradition and the difference between us and them. And they can do what they want to do, but they can do it over there, and that way we can do what we want to do, and we don't have to talk to them about things. So borders are very important for a myriad reasons that the liberal left and liberal center doesn't actually respect. So me in coalition with big woman, the problem is they have all of their dad's money and all of their husband's money, and they have all the money. They have all the money in left spaces, which means that, especially left like organizing spaces, big woman has all the money, which means that when you're in coalition with them, you actually work for them. They set the order of operations. They set like the priorities. We might all be for the same things, but we can only fight for one thing at a time. And if you don't fight for their things on their timeline in their order, their eyes glaze over, and then they won't pay attention, and then they won't continue the money. So like I'm kind of like I am a little bit slow to back coalition politics as it stands, because I think you need to go out, go strong, be who you are. Go out, go strong, be who you are, and build a base that way, and build a whole world as much as you can that way, and then the coalition will come to you. Because right now, if you try to be in coalition with big women, which is like, the white professional class women, if you're in coalition with them, you end up working for them because they have all the money. So, by the way, if you want me to have a little bit of money and want me to be able to take on big women in a more robust way, go to www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. Look, I'm not going to take sponsorships. You're not going to see me shilling for those electric razors that will groom you. Or you're not going to see me shilling for DraftKings or FanPix or any of those gambling websites, because I think that's all poisonous, and I wouldn't sell you anything that's poisonous. And so I need you to go and just be a direct sponsor at www.funkyacademic.com, because nobody's going to take on both a big woman and be a leftist and and say what I'm willing to say about the Zionists. So just be honest and go to www.funkyacademic.com. Support this project, because I'm giving you a quality of insight and, depending on who you talk to, entertainment that will help you not squander your life. I also don't believe that all these devices should be in schools, and that my kids should not come home with homework they have to do on learning apps. I think that's pernicious in ways that we will find out in 30 years. Turns out it was all a scam and none of that stuff works. But I don't want an entire generation to have to fail the test for America to learn the lesson. So we are not in a position to take out big women if you're in coalition with them, because they have all the money. And as an institution, the Democratic Party, or any minor institution, nonprofit or political organizing campaign, you need money, right? And they have money. So I'm hoping that the new right, the red pill right will take out big woman, because anybody on the left's not in a position to do so. We're just not. And same way with AIPAC. I'm hoping the new right will take out AIPAC, because the people on the left aren't willing to do so. Either we're too nice or too bought. And so I'm waiting for the new right to take them out. And then we have to take out the new right, which I think is an easier fight, right? If the new right takes out AIPAC and the new right takes out big woman, then it'll be easier to take out the new right, because I think we have the arguments and they would have cleared the field, and that's probably better for everyone involved. All right. So that's where we are. That's kind of my ideology, but I don't think, or my kind of political strategy, but I'm not convinced that Mamdani's tack will work, because, big women will never be appeased. They will never be, like, he could hire all of them, but the moment he pisses off one of them, there'll be allegations. It's amazing that Obama made it so far without allegations, but he would never actually tick off the money. So, I just don't see, I don't see a way of being an effective progressive without being incredibly vulnerable to big women. Because in a world where you can't tell women to shut up, you can't really have a political disagreement. You can't tell them to sit down. I can tell men to sit down every day. I can cuss them out. Can't do that to women, though. And that's a problem. That's a political liability. And we're just not honest about how much, how gendered a lot of conversations are. Not just learning styles and conversation styles. I'm just saying that, like, even approaches to market economics. We have a gendered approach to market economics, so that, like, women don't know how hard it is out there. They think they do, but they also have guys opening doors and paying for dates, and people just being nice to them since they were girls. in a way. Even if there was an alternative, there's still being an ulterior motive. They're still being nice to them, right? In a way that like nobody's nice to guys in that way. So like the harshness of the market and the importance of labor politics, the importance of work, all of these things kind of you're at a cultural disadvantage when you're dealing in a resistant space. You're at a cultural disadvantage when you're dealing at a resistant space, which would be fine if you could actually articulate to them that like they're wrong about things. But we live in a world, and I'll be honest, I was a product of this world. I grew up with a single mom, and you know my single mom just kind of decided that I didn't need a dad. Yeah, she made that like later, but she just kind of decided. That I didn't need a dad. So that was not a wise decision for myself or my sister. But you know, it made her happy, and that's kind of one of the entitlements of modern feminism that we just got to deal with. So what can we do to deal with big woman and the influence of feminism on democratic politics, which is not particularly great for race politics, not particularly great for labor politics, and not particularly great for gender politics even. Hold on. Someone says, I hope your sister's doing okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, not as well as she could have done. Right? So, and now dealing with big women is going to be a problem because they'll just say like, well, there's so many men in the Democratic Party in power. Yeah, but often it's because they took a ridiculous amount of risk and have a high tolerance for insult. And also male feminists get used in the same way that Christian Zionists get used. Male feminists get used in the same way that Christian Zionists get used. They want to cozy up to the women or the Zionists, and some are true believers, and others just kind of want to like just be in the good graces of the people who actually really run them. And in the same way that Christian Zionists need to get dealt with, male feminists need to get dealt with because they're not the strongest allies. And one of the problem with big women is that since it's a partial identity group, they're more loyal to other women who they don't even like because they're women than they are to you if you have the same ideas, right? So the problem with dealing with big women, especially feminists, is that they'll be more loyal to other women who they don't even like than they will to the political ideal, because they don't believe in ideals, they believe in feelings, to the political ideals that we're supposed to be fighting for. And that is a problem. And like, you know, they're petty and vindictive and they'll cancel you. And like, after I saw what big woman did to Shahid Buttar, it's really like, I mean, I've seen it my whole life, but like that was just so naked that anytime you're like too left of women, and women are a conservative bunch, like they will, like all of a sudden allegations will pop up, right? So Zoran Mamdani won this race because Mario Cuomo is a credible geriatric sex pest, and those are easy to beat relatively. But had he run against Hochul, had he run against a basic Democratic woman who was still like an establishment hack, that would have been a really hard race for him in a different way. Like, we were helped because Cuomo is like a noted sex pest. Thank goodness Mamdani had the right opponent. Thank goodness. All right. Someone says the issue with big woman is they use fear to push their ideas. Yeah, I mean, also the retribution, the backlash. I mean, cancel culture isn't something guys do in the same way, right? So, Apparently, this is getting a little bit more play because of the feminization thesis put forth by a recent Helen Andrews piece in Compact. I'm not a huge fan of that piece because I think it's a little bit sloppy with respect to which she just kind of extended woke to all of these things that have nothing to do with black people and to all these things she didn't like. And I mean, this is another one of those situations where feminists have appropriated justice talk that properly belongs to racial justice, and especially anti-black racism, and then like screwed it up, and now it stigmatizes the whole thing. So I'm not a huge fan of the Helen Andrews piece. If you can go find it on Compact about the feminization of workplace, but she hits on a few of the right things in terms of it's not just that we let women into our institutions or America's institutions. It's that they're not reconstructed. So we let unreconstructed women into institutions, and then the institutions have to construct themselves around the unreconstructed women. And one of the conceits of unreconstructed womanhood, especially at the professional level, is that you expect people to be nice to you. You expect people to be conciliatory in a way that might not be effective. You expect people to protect your feelings. You expect to be protected in ways that are not right, if like we're actually working to do a thing. So it screws up the whole dynamic. So I'm a fan of equal rights. I believe women can do everything that men can do. I just don't think in the United States we're honest about what kind of culture it would take to support that. And so we let unreconstructed women into places and then have to construct the places around their sensibilities, being held hostage. And I think there are stakes. I think there are stakes to America's labor politics. I think there are stakes to America's gender politics even. I think there are stakes to America's family politics. You know, listen, so I'm of that era of black men who grew up with like just women all the way around, and I had a sister and a mom, and I grew up with like competent women in school, like good at school women, girls who were good at school. And so like I always thought women were smart, and I honestly, and for the most part, I still kind of think it's true that like, yeah, they were smarter than I was. But I used to think that like if I thought something and then a woman told me that it was wrong, I should just take her advice. It's obvious that I was wrong, and I should spend time figuring out how I was wrong about it. And that was just how I grew up, assuming that like women had better judgment than men or that way. And then I kept seeing them screw up everything. And I realized, oh, no, they're just regular people. And part of the ideology is telling men and boys that women have like this like superior judgment, ethical and otherwise judgment. And that's how we can get a nation where, you know, people can throw away fathers and say that kids don't need fathers, and presume that kids don't need fathers, and women don't, and single mothers don't need checks on their authority, right? Because that's what happens when you throw away the other parent. You remove a check on the authority. I flicked off the camera by mistake. You remove a check on the authority, and you remove like a man, right? So who might know something different about the world, because the world might open itself up to something different. So we had to like all of the legitimizing institutions and ideology that went into a world that had to obtain so that it was okay just to jettison a marriage or like the child's father. And this isn't saved with 50-50 custody. That just means nobody gets a parent. This isn't saved with 50-50 custody. Is enormous. And a lot of unreconstructed women end up in the Democratic Party still assuming that they're right about everything, and the things that they don't care about don't matter. And we got to actually deal with that. And I don't think we can deal with it as coalition partners because they have all the money. But the outside of the coalition, The new right can, because they have a properly combative relationship with them. They can have a properly combative relationship with them. Nick Fuentes doesn't have to pretend that like bad ideas from women are good ideas, in the way that as Democrats we have to pretend that bad ideas from women are good ideas. And so, like I said, that debate that probably won't happen except in my imagination between Heather Cox Richardson and Nick Fuentes, I think will open a lot of people's eyes to the usefulness of the new right. Now, I want the new right to take care of big woman. I want the new right to take care of AIPAC. And then we got to take care of the new right, because they have issues too, especially around race and even gender and all these other issues. But if you take anything from this, I want you to take from the show that Mamdani, he gave women all of the seats in his transition team, which might be good, but is it going to be enough to stave off accusations of sexism? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised. Now that there are all these women there might be more accusations of sexism because there's so much opportunity. And so who knows? I do know that I don't know how many women were on his campaign team, but that was when like his campaign wasn't supposed to win. And he probably got a lot of people who would gamble with him early, and maybe that just wasn't women, a lot of women. All right, so let me look at chat real quick. And remember when Bernie Sanders said, "Excuse me, I'm talking to Hillary"? Debate, the backlash as well. Yeah, like I remember when Liz Warren accused Bernie of being sexist, and it's like, wait a minute. Nobody thought it was true, but nobody was allowed to say that, like nobody famous was allowed to say that. Of course this wasn't true. And like for a while, Bernie tried to treat Hillary just like an opponent, and he wasn't even allowed to do that. And I think that's too bad. But you know who was allowed to do that? Donald Trump. Maybe that's the model, right? So when leftists fight women, it'll be like Bernie fighting Hillary Clinton. We have to like kind of have kitty gloves on. But when Republicans fight women, they can use all the names. They could use all the names like Trump did. And so that's why it's possible that the Republicans can take out big woman in a way that maybe Democrats can't. And if that's going to be an obstacle to progress, because big woman has really kind of unfortunate priorities with respect to labor, race, and even gender politics. Once we take out like them as an overwhelming authority within the party, then we could actually get to better labor politics and better race politics, and possibly even better gender politics. Now, I will say that the blood and soil rhetoric of Nick Fuentes scares a lot of people, but you need blood and soil rhetoric if you want to make lineage claims about reparations. So you need the new right for reparations talk. And this is going to be a controversial argument. I'm probably going to do a whole show on this, but you need the new right for reparations. Then there are a surprising amount of like right people who actually support reparations. Now, they don't support it in the scope that we need, but they're not averse to the idea. But you need the idea of a nation so that we can talk about what the nation did to its own people. And you need the idea of a nation's own people and a people in order for any of this to work, right? So if you want lineage-based politics, if you want reparations, if you want to think that family matters, and then what's transmitted through families and the degradations and the wealth and, the confidence and, like I said, like anxiousness is transmitted through families. You need people who believe in families. And a lot of those people are on the right. So I would rather deal with a right than a liberal center who has a hard time taking any of this seriously unless it has to do with caring. We'll give reparations because we care. And that's different than like paying a debt that's owed. All right. So let me look real quickly at chat. And if you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And chat, tell me, do you think So on Mamdani's tribute to Big Woman, his pound of flesh is going to be enough for them, or is their appetite insatiable? Are they just going to want more and more and more and more and more, and it's going to be impossible for him to emerge from this without being seen as a sexist? Or even worse, if is he going to lose all of his edge because he'll be some male feminist who can't actually say ugly things to people behaving ugly if those ugly people behaving uglily are women? All right. I don't know. All right. So did you see that Mamdani got 60% of the black male vote? Highest percent. I think he got more than 6%. Highest percent of basically any gender. Yeah, it turns out, there's data that says black men are actually pretty progressive. And more progressive than Evelyn Simeon. I believe her name is Evelyn. Anyway, there are black feminists who will even admit that black men, depending on the study, are more progressive than all groups of women, including black women. All right, so I don't know. I like dealing with big women is not a negligible thing because the industries in which they're in, they do not wield power, especially feminists. They do not wield power responsibly. And it's a matter of culture. It's nothing wrong with their DNA. They're not like some inscrutable whatever. It's just like American womanhood is a problem with respect to accountability and responsibility and the entitlement to have your feelings protected in a certain way. And I'm not a huge fan of unreconstructed womanhood. I am a fan of reconstructed womanhood. It's the unreconstructed womanhood that I'm not a huge fan. I even see it screwing my daughters. And I've said before that the worst influences on my daughters, and I didn't see this until it was too late, especially with my oldest. The worst influences on my daughter are women teaching them how to be women. No, that's how the bad stuff comes in. Women teaching them how to be women. It gives them all the wrong kinds of entitlements. All right, so you may have a video addressing this. I have missed. This is a comment. But any thoughts on the tension between UBI and reparations? Yeah, so reparations only work if they just go to black people. Money only makes sense in terms of other money. So if you give everybody money, you got inflation. You need to give black people relative money so that it can compete with non-black money. Right, and resources, right? If you give it to everybody, then the price of everything just goes up. It doesn't really help anyone. Money's like that. Not all things are like that, but money's like that. So I'm not a huge fan of the UBI. Plus, I think people should be paid for either restitution or activity. And UBI is just paying people for just being. Not a huge fan of that. I am a huge fan of paying people very, very, very well for their activity, especially if it's productive activity. And if you think I should get paid, like I said, go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, $50 a month, send this video around, tell all your friends. That would be fantastic. But I think people should get paid for the work they do, not for just being. Rights can be secured in other ways for just being. But money should be secured by activity. And there's enough work for people to do. Contribute to society. I will advocate for you to get paid very, very, very well for the work you do. Even if it's not glamorous work. Especially if it's not glamorous work. You should get a bonus for doing not glamorous work. That's why I'm okay with plumbers making so much money. They put all of their elbow deep in poop. They should get all of the money. All right. I have a distaste for make work. All right, so this idea that make work, the WPA wasn't make work. It was doing work. It was doing work that needs to be done, not glamorous work. If it were up to me, I could get class sizes down to 3. And in America, a lot of people need it. Class sizes down to 3. You can call that make work, but it's class sizes down to 3. It's actually sometimes what we need to do the job. You can do wellness checks. And all these old people growing old alone in small towns across the United States. Well, and then you send a text to their nearest relative or whatever saying, I checked in on Myrtle and she's doing all right. Go back and live your life in the city. So like there's work to be done. This idea that a federal job guarantee would or paying people very well to work creates make work is just a little bit ridiculous. Especially considering I'm in the South right now. There's like 80 years of deferred labor and deferred maintenance to be done on roads and schools. In some of these southern towns, it's just awful. Plus, not every place even has wire. So there's work to be done. There's work to be done. That's not make work. But that work isn't going to be honored by the market necessarily or immediately. So that's what I'm talking about. All right, so Mamdani said thanks to immigrants and single moms and black women, even when black men were the hugest support. Look, like I have a tolerance for being treated like trash. So I'm going to give Mamdani a little bit of grace because I don't know what it's like to be mayor of New York. And I do think that the Democratic Party is so anti-black man, you can't really be outwardly pro-black man and still expect to do the job. So I don't know. I'll see. I'll see with him. So big woman, I think they're like, since they have so much money and they both have numbers in the party and so much money, because by the time you're a feminist, that means all the real problems you have are taken care of. So they have money, they have time, and there are a lot of them, and they're all in the party, in the Democratic Party. So I don't think you can be a coalition with them when you depend on their money. That you end up being a tool for them or a tool of them. So we need someone with a properly antagonistic relationship to take them out. Maybe Mamdani can do it this way by just giving them everything they want. But I think the new right might be able to just like expose them as being as incompetent as, unchecked people are. Like one of the problems with dealing with big women is that like you can't correct them on anything. So we just have to let them screw up public education. We have to let them screw up families. We have to let them screw up politics. We have to let them go brain dead as members of the Senate. And I'm talking about Feinstein. We have to pretend that they didn't hold on too long to their judicial position and screw up the Supreme Court. Yeah, I'm talking about RBG. We have to pretend the big woman is fine, and I just don't want to pretend. And you can't pretend, you can't actually get to it. That's going to screw up the party until someone takes them out. And I think it might happen to the other party in the same way that Bernie couldn't take out Hillary Clinton, took Trump. That's my thought. Peace.